Well, we're joined now by international defense and security consultant David Otto. Also with us is Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi, who is a former member of the ECOWAS Parliament and the national coordinator of the Security Governance Initiative. Gentlemen, good to see you. And well, it looks like a month or week of protests across many parts of the world, but let's restrict this to Nigeria in the interim and start off with you, Aliyu Gebi. Are there any known connections between protest organizers and Russian interests? Just sort of jumping into this quickly here, Gebi.
Well, I mean, we can speculate all that we want. As an adult, someone approaching midlife, this is the first time I'm seeing a protest where another foreign entity's flag is being flown. Usually when there are religious processions or religious protests in northern Nigeria, at the very least of it, at the highest of it, the max of it, you would see the flag of Saudi Arabia being waved because of the inscription on it. Everyone is aware of what it means to wave another country's flag on your sovereign state, especially within the context that it was seen. Of course, if you have international hotels, international schools, you can fly other flags, but to take it to a protest, calling for military takeover, this is the first time, and this must not be condoned. Having said that, it's not too difficult also to make the connection. For example, all the people carrying the flags that I have seen through scrutiny of all the videos available, these are people below the ages of 25. They have no idea what the concept of military rule is. Our democracy is 25 years old. So any teenager or 20-year-old or 25-year-old that takes a flag to say we want the military to come back, that is not the person speaking. Having said that, however, we should not forget the proximity of the northern Nigeria and some of the states that are in the clutches of other foreign interests, as it were. We have Burkina on one side, you have Niger, and then upwards you have Mali. So these spheres of influences, of course, from time to time collide with Nigeria. And also we have seen the Russian Federation carry out influence operations even in the United States of America during elections. And there is no gainsaying in hitting the nail on the head to say that, of course, there is Russian disinformation and misinformation campaign in West Africa. Has it birthed in Nigeria? This remains to be seen, and without prejudice to what I do not know, and I'm certain our domestic intelligence agencies are up to the task, they will uncover whatever is going on and they will come out and say what it is. However, for me, the Russian embassy should have distanced itself from the first appearance of the flag, not to wait until there's a tidal wave of the flags before putting out a statement. But I'm certain the intelligence agencies, the foreign ministry, the NSA, will get to the root of this matter, and certainly it will come out. And how did these people know that this is a Russian flag? How did they know what the colors, what the color combination is, and how to stand the colors? Brilliantly, pristinely arranged, and then the person that was captured, there is no way one person could have produced this many flags in this short period of time. Did these flags come across the border? Were they brought in? These are things that the DSS and other intelligence agencies must uncover. However, for me personally, I feel they have taken the right of Nigerians to voice out their legitimate grievances by injecting this noxious and obnoxious tint into the discourse of what should have been a legitimate airing of grievances.
I mean, very, very well said, raising so many questions there. David Otto, let me bring you in here. I mean, Russia's growing influence, not just in West Africa, in North Africa and what have you, is an open secret. Should Nigeria be concerned about this development?
Well, I think, first of all, one has to agree that, when you look at the psychology of a crowd that has been studied for ages, one thing which is very critical is that you cannot control what a crowd does, once it steps into the street, whether for reasons of protest or for reasons of riot or both. So it's very difficult to predict what a crowd can do as long as it has stormed the streets. Now, the idea that there is a Russian influence within the Sahel or the western part of Africa or beyond that within the central part, that is something that no one can deny. Geopolitics is something that is being practiced by not just the Eastern nations but also the Western nations. There is a continuous, a recolonization of the African nations. Something that was done in the 19th and 18th century. Now, whether Russia is directly involved in the instance, of Nigeria is something that it's difficult to tell. Will Russia benefit from this? My co-panelist made a very good point. Nigeria shares a very strong affiliation with countries in the Sahel. And we have seen, just like many have, Russian flags being flown during protests for the military juntas that took over from democratic regimes. We've seen that in the case of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and others. So it's nothing new in this instance, especially in the timing and the frame of the current situation, to see Russian flags being flown. Now, there could be a correlation to that. Perhaps, some of the protesters were insinuating that should the military take over, as some protesters have been calling, and remember that there is a similar Nigerian army flag that has almost the same color, but for the fact that the white is much more gray. And it is possible that there was an initial confusion between that flag and the Russian flag. And then perhaps, when the whole idea spread, then it led to that gray bit turn into a white. So there are so many permutations, that one can take. But what is very evident, as we can see now, is that, the crowd has begun in some locations to fly what now appears to be a Russian flag. And of course, the Nigerian government has made it very clear, the military has made it very clear that it's a treasonable offense, because the implication could be that should the military take over, then Russia is going to come to their assistance. Something that has happened in countries like Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, to which Nigeria belongs to the same regional body, ECOWAS. So these are not things that the government should take lightly. And I think that, what has been very general indeed is that, once you allow a crowd to storm the streets for reasons of protest, be it good reasons or bad reasons, it is very difficult to control their action. And this is one of it as we speak.
Okay, David, thanks for your insights here. Let me bring in Gebi again, because Gebi, you asked very logical questions. These are questions that need answers and not just left as rhetorical questions. The precision and, of course, looking at the knowledge or the educational standard of those waving those flags. Many of these people ordinarily don't know a thing about this flag. So it brings us to, are there indications, Gebi, of who might be responsible sponsoring these? Because you alluded to the fact that even David said the same thing, that we shouldn't run away from the Russian interference, knowing full well that they've had a hand in some African countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you look at it, Russia just got free publicity in the most populous country in Africa, the most populous black nation in the world, one of the most important countries in the world. Russia got cheap publicity. And whatever Russia will do with this publicity, whether to continue to deny it or to perhaps offer themselves as an honest broker to try to mediate between the government and the protesters remains to be seen. But the fact of the matter is, there is no contesting the fact that the people that put this flag out there and the people carrying the flag knew what they were doing. It was the Russian flag. And they knew for a fact that the color combination and how to stand the flag is accurate. Otherwise, if it was upside down, then they would know that it would mean something else. And in the president's standard, the commander-in-chief's flag, it is not white, it is sky blue, denoting the color of the Air Force. And this is the first time, assuming this argument holds water, this is the first time that that flag has ever been used in any protestation in Nigeria. But for us to see coordinated paraphernalia storming not just one location, multiple locations in a span of a few days, should point to something more sinister. Whether Russia is guilty remains to be seen. Whether there are other insidious political undertones remains to be seen.
And Gebi, isn't that indicative of a hijack? Keep in mind, this is happening only in northern Nigeria.
You are absolutely correct. But then again, which part of Nigeria is bordering the Sahel, where these flags are already flying, where such actors are already present? We should not extricate these facts from themselves. What is happening in Niger has direct consequence and bearing in Nigeria. What is happening in Mali, in Burkina, also has direct consequence in northern Nigeria specifically. The Sahelian belt, and it is a belt, has expanded to engulf Nigeria. Nigeria is now a Sahelian state. So the intelligence agencies must not take this sitting down and then try to sweep it under the carpet. Were there legitimate grievances why people took to the street? Yes, there was. After all, APC itself as a party is a party that was formed out of protest. National Assembly, ACN and CPC protested against PDP and created APC. And APC was birthed as a child of protest. President Muhammadu Buhari became the flag bearer as a child of protest, became a president as a child of protest, handed over to our protesting commander of protest in Nigeria. So protesting is not only a constitutional right, it's a human right, it is a right of any politician, any political party. However, there are boundaries, there are conditions, there are precedents to be set, but there are legitimate grievances, and if these grievances had been addressed, perhaps we wouldn't have spilled into day 3, where the flags would have shown. Should the president have addressed Nigeria much sooner with the address that he did later, that would have been the perfect opportunity for him to have said what he said. But what he said during the protest is something that is in very high language. Non-technical people do not understand the difference between macroeconomics and microeconomics. And when you have highly competent technical members of his cabinet, very intelligent young men and women, coming to show graphs and charts and bars and so on, projecting things that even me with my normal petty university education will find it difficult to understand. Right. How much more the people at the grassroots? Politicians know how to speak to people at every tier of society. Mr. President, it is time to speak to the people the same way you spoke to them when we were campaigning. Take it to the ground, to the grassroots, and speak to them in their own language.
Absolutely. David Otto, I mean, you're an international defense and security consultant. If you were to advise the Nigerian government and, of course, the security agencies, what would you be saying to them, especially bearing in mind what could be the likely motives of this, foreign mercenaries making incursions into Nigeria's business?
Well, I think it has to be a coordinated effort. The Nigerian security agencies have a role to play in terms of ensuring that the protest is well managed. You've got to remember that protest is one of the most powerful weapons that can cripple a state if it goes wrong towards the line of a riot. We've seen what happened during the Jasmine Revolution in 2011. What is popularly known as the Arab Spring, taking down governments. We've seen several of these kind of situations happening in the western part of course, the eastern part of Africa as well. Kenya was one of them. Even in Nigeria itself, we saw the NSAS protest, the Lekki Gate. So the government understands the dangers that it does face. And this is one of the reasons why in the beginning, the government struggled to try and dissuade people from going to the streets. Now, I think what needs to be done is that the commander-in-chief and the president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, needs to go down with his language in terms of ensuring that he addresses directly some of the concerns. I mean, these are very legitimate concerns. I mean, even the government accepts that there are concerns which has led to people going to the street. But a nationwide protest is one of the most deadliest weapons that can bring down any regime if it is not well managed. So I think, there has to be a coordinated effort between the politicians, the security agencies, to make sure that they can address some of these key issues that, the people who are going on the streets, who are hungry. Of course, remember that, I think what the government is playing at now, which they probably do not understand, is that when a crowd storms the street for one reason, it may take more than that for you to pull them out, especially if you leave it for a very long time. So I think, there has to be proactive measures. I mean, I know the government is reacting, the protest is on day 5, but somehow they need to do something very quickly.
Okay, we'll have to
before we leave quickly here, let's bring this to Gebi, if we can do this for a minute. And that's this fifth columnist conversation that is out there on the street, that it just might be the government and its agents trying to infiltrate the protesters to discredit them. What would you say to that?
That is, with all due respect, that is ridiculous. If this was a false flag operation, there are other ways of achieving that without having to wave a Russian flag and putting ideas into the minds of people
it's
who would
ridiculous,
otherwise
but
have.
is it a possibility?
No, it is not a possibility. The government would not have gone through this route. It is absolutely impossible. We would not see the government by itself undermining its own source of legitimacy and bringing an idea into the mindset of its people that are already desperate for some kind of succor. It is impossible. Now, how to resolve this thing? It is easy. What we don't do is our leaders do not talk to the citizens. They talk at the citizens. They don't listen to respond. They listen to solve the problem. They only listen to respond. An opportunity has presented itself, and I think if we miss this opportunity because of a failure of strategic communications, then there's no telling where we will end up.
Absolutely, and hopefully we can discover exactly what the motive is of this foreign, infiltrations. David Otto, International Defense and Security Consultant. Aliyu Gebi, National Coordinator, Security Governance Initiative. Thank you, both of you, for joining us.